Hello, welcome back to another Swans Cast match preview. So we've got a Sunday match this week against Burnley, and I've got Joe from TurfCast here to discuss all things Burnley with us. So welcome, Joe. First time on the channel, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, not spent too much time in the Championship so far. We obviously did a couple of seasons ago, but if I remember rightly, we did converse back then, but I don't think we could make anything happen. So yeah, I think it is the first time.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. So we got you here now. Yeah, you obviously returned to the Championship after last season. Before we get on to any of that football stuff, though, obviously I've mentioned from TurfCast already. So can you just let everyone know where they can find your content and your channel?
Yeah, just search TurfCast Podcast on available as a podcast as well. But we do a lot of stuff on YouTube, quite big on Facebook, got 40,000 followers on Facebook now. And obviously we're on all the social medias, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, we're there.
Brilliant. So go check that out. That is the opposite version of this video there. I'll link it in the description below. So anyone wants to go check that out, be sure to do so. I just want to put a disclaimer in. I know Joe mentioned to me earlier, well, Burnley are not playing until after this video in the midweek fixture. You got West Brom, was it?
Yeah, West Brom. So West Brom away, and annoyingly, you've got 2 days rest more than us, which is my early excuse, mate. If you beat us, it's because of that. The EFL haters.
That is a bit weird, though. Thursday evening fixture. That's not normally.
I think that's the original reason why this is probably on Sunday. I don't know. I guess it'd have all got chosen in the same TV picks, to be fair. So I'm not sure. This one is on TV, isn't it? I think I have just said on my video in front
Sunday
of the Sky
3
cameras.
o'clock. I actually haven't checked, to be honest.
I haven't checked.
I just assume unless the Saturday 3 o'clock, they're all on Sky Plus these days.
Yeah. To be fair, yeah.
So I would imagine it is on Sky Plus, but I don't know if it's on like the main channel. Anyone in the comments, let us know if we haven't got a clue. I'm sure somebody will. But yeah, anyway, let's get stuck in. I'd like to just kind of recap and revisit last season. It doesn't have to be too much detail, but obviously you went up, and we know what happened in the end. But where you finished, was that kind of in line with the expectations, or was it disappointment really in regards to how the season went?
No, yeah, massive disappointment. I mean, looking back in hindsight now, we probably did get a little bit carried away, but I was expecting to be nowhere near relegation, if I'm honest with you. We were so good in that Championship season, and I've seen Ipswich and Leicester fans that fall foul of the same sort of thing this year. I don't think people realise how big the gap is now. Obviously, Swansea spent a long time in the Premier League as well, so you'll have had experience of it. And yes, the quality is obviously better, but the gap now is just so much bigger. Like, we were the best team, like the Championship scene for, quite a while last time we were in the Championship, and we just got bullied every single week. And it set the tone. Like the first game of the season, all right, it was against Man City, so it's an extreme example. But the first game of the season, everyone's buzzing. I remember I was working up in Newcastle that day, so I proper bombed back. All speed legal, of course. A proper bombed back just to get back for kickoff, and everyone's buzzing. Atmosphere's class, and we were like 1-0 down within 3 minutes. I think we were 2-0 down within 7 minutes, and it just proper set the tone, man. Like, it was so difficult, and it was such a tough season. We went from cloud 9 to pretty much living in hell. It was horrible last season, just getting beat week in, week out. So yeah, it's just that the gap in qualities seems a lot bigger these days. I know a lot of fans say it, but it's like the journey's better than the destination at the minute. Because the gap in money and things like that, it's just made it pretty much impossible. And don't get me wrong, I know the season before us, all 3 teams stayed up, but then it's looking like, obviously all 3 teams got relegated last season. It's looking like it's going to be the same again. So hopefully we don't fall into this trap of it being incredibly difficult to break into that top 20, because it's already difficult to break into like the top 6, 7, 8, isn't it? So you don't want it to be like the top table being pretty much for the same teams every single time. So yeah, but it was tough, mate. Yeah, and we expected more based on the season that we had in the Championship.
Yeah, it is, I think, getting a bit of a worry. I don't know what the solution is really, but I do think something needs to be done about the gulf, because it just seems to be growing. And
yeah, it does.
It's not great, is it, really, for football in general, I think. Company, though, moving on to quite a top job from that season. Like, was that what's going on there? Because I feel like from the outside perspective, that was a bit like, all right, okay, he's got rewarded for getting relegated, I guess.
He failed upwards. I think the term was used quite a lot by Burnley fans. Like, look, he will suit that job, and I do think he'll win the Bundesliga with them my nan would win the Bundesliga with them. But I do think he'll win the Bundesliga because it's a similar thing to when he was in the Championship with us. He's at the best team with the best players with the biggest budget, so he can play in his style and do what he wants and implement his style on that team and on that division and do it very, very well. That's what he did in the Championship, and I suspect that's what he'll do in the Bundesliga. But when he was playing in the Premier League, obviously, and he doesn't have the best squad, he doesn't have the biggest budget, he doesn't, and everybody seems to play in a better style or a similar style to him. He was found out when he was out of his depth. And I'm thinking it's going to be the same this year in the Champions League. Now, I've not seen the result they've had this week, but obviously they've lost at Villa. I think ultimately the way that Champions League division is now, I think it's again weighted towards the bigger clubs. They've got a chance to qualify. I do think they'll qualify, but I don't think they'll get anywhere near winning it. Famous last words now, cut to me. He's there lifting the Champions League trophy, but I still think he's got a long way to go. I mean, look, I did say at the end of the Championship season that I expect him to go on and win league titles in countries. I think I expected him to do it with City rather than Bundesliga. So I do expect him to do well. I do expect him to be a good manager. But yeah, last year he was completely out of his depth, too stubborn. But in a similar way to like what Russell Martin is now, like he's playing.
You know what I was going to say? It sounds a lot like Russell Martin. You have this way of playing. You won't change it for anyone, no matter who you're up against. And
because he knows that these clubs are looking and they want that style. That's all it is. Like Man City might be looking at Russell Martin, extreme example, fair enough. But, if Vincent Kompany can go to one of the 5 biggest clubs in Europe based on Burnley's season last season, then...
Well, I mean, when he went to Southampton from here, he wasn't exactly... He had a period of like 24 games where we won 3 matches. He nearly got sacked. Ended the season well by winning 7 out of 9 and then got moved to Southampton. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's the style of play, isn't it? And this is what a lot of clubs are looking for in managers these days. Like the style of play first, results not second, but they'd rather have a manager that's shown glimpses of success and plays in a certain way than like Sean Dyche is a perfect example. Nobody wants him as their manager because his football is apparently turgid and tedious and it's awful. It's just dinosaur Route 1 football. So people tell me every single week. But then he got Burnley to 7th in the Premier League. His reward, getting sacked and going to Everton, which is the most toxic club in the country. Vincent Kompany gives me one of my worst experiences as a Burnley fan ever in terms of the full season, and he's rewarded with what, in my opinion, is like the top 5 biggest clubs in Europe. I doubt many people disagree with that, to be fair. But
it's crazy.
Style of play, substance over results, isn't it?
Yeah, well, let's see how he gets on. Obviously not there anymore. Scott Parker now. So how has he started this season then?
It's been it's weird because the first 2 games people always look at Burnley having scored like I can't remember how many goals it is off the top of my head, but we scored 4 goals in the opening game against Luton and then 5 goals like the week after against Cardiff.
I watched the Luton game and I thought you were quite impressive. To be
fair. We were really good.
I was like, are they going to walk the league again?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I'm sat there thinking, happy days, we're going to do it again. But since then, there was a ridiculous end to the transfer window where we sold about 10 players within a week. Literally every morning you were waking up to a new rumour out of nowhere. Dara O'Shea's going Ipswich. Oh, of course not. Literally 3 hours later, Dara O'Shea's unveiled at Ipswich. Muric going Ipswich. Like a new rumour every single day and a new player leaving every day. And it was telling because we played Sunderland after in the middle of like the midst of the transfer window. And Scott Parker and Josh Brownhill in their press conference were both saying, you don't know whether you're coming or going at the minute. Like, you don't know who's going to be here tomorrow. Josh Brown alludes to the fact that he doesn't know if he's going to still be here tomorrow. So there was a big, massive mess, and the board really cocked that transfer window up, in my opinion, or the way it happened. Like, I respect that all these players wanted to leave, and you need to trim the wage bill when you get relegated. Every football fan knows that, but do it over the course of the transfer window. If you can, do it at the start of the transfer window. But no, they kept hold of all the best players and then sold them all in like 3 or 4 days. Like we lost Wilson Odebear, who played in that opening game, Zeki Amdouni, who scored against Cardiff, Wout Weghorst, who came on against Cardiff, Johan Berg-Gudmundsson, who also scored against Cardiff. So we just sold so many players. And since then, it's been a bit tough for us. Like, we have been picking up wins, but there's been a lot of draws in there. The squad's still relatively new to each other, though. Like, I am still giving Scott Parker the benefit of the doubt. Like, the football might not be great at the minute. There's a lot of people complaining about that. I'm personally not overly bothered about the style of football. Like, I was, a football team watching Sean Dyche for 9 years. I can't really be snobbery about the style of play. But there's been times where we just don't look like scoring. Like we went 1-0 down against Millwall, and I think after we conceded, we had like 0.02 xg. Like, that's not enough. You've got to be trying to get back into the game, and they're not doing enough. So there is times where you look at it and you think something needs to change. This isn't good enough. But at the same time, 13 games in at this stage? Well, by the time this is released, I think it'll be 14 or whatever. Let's just relax, everybody, Burnley fans, if you're watching this. It's not that bad just yet. Still fourth in the league. A win tonight, fingers crossed, or could take us up to third, I think, if we score a certain amount. I don't know. I don't look at the league table too much, but there's been issues. There's been issues, but it's not as bad as some fans are making out, to be fair. If we learn to put the ball in the back of the net, I know it's easier said than done, then I think we'll be more than okay.
So if you take out the 2 games that you spoke about at the beginning of the season, the 4 and 5 goals, yeah?
Yeah, so obviously 9 goals in them first 2 games.
You're in very, very much a similar situation to what all Swans fans have been going through, and we spoke about this just now in your video. So let's take 9 goals off. You would have scored 8 goals. 8 goals, excluding those first 2 games, and conceded 6. We scored, again, if we take off yesterday, because obviously in line with how many games we both played, we would have scored 10, conceded 9. So very, very similar. We are playing arguably similar passing style of football ways. So talk to me a little bit about, you mentioned there your lack of creativity and difficulty scoring goals. Like, what's going on with all of that?
Well, a lot of people are blaming Parker for it, and don't get me wrong, the tactics aren't exactly the most free-flowing thing in the world, but we are getting in good positions. Again, against Millwall, we didn't. But QPR at home, for example, all right, they were just a team that was saying, come at us. So obviously we have more chance to get into good positions. I respect that. But we got in behind quite a few times. It's just we have certain players that are getting in behind and just are not making the right choices. Like, Millwall is obviously another example that I keep using, but even then, like, we did get in behind. Luca Koleosho got in behind once, either beat his fullback or latched onto a pass. I can't remember exactly. And then he gets into a good position. You think, hit it across goal. And he goes near post and out, and silly things like that. And against QPR, we got in behind so times, and the ball wasn't right or the shot was off. So we are getting in good positions, and that's why I don't think tactically it's horrendous. But I think what Parker relies on a lot, which isn't a bad thing, and he said it recently in an interview that he wants a bit more quality, a bit more individual quality in the final third. And that's a fair enough comment, but fans have seen that and taken it and saying, "Oh, he doesn't have a clue with his tactics. He's relying on individual quality." It's like, no, what he's saying is he needs the players to be better. Like Pep says the same thing sometimes about players. People don't have a go at Pep because they think he's some sort of genius. I'm not for 1 second comparing Scott Parker and Pep, but people are latching onto things at the minute because they've been told certain things by certain fans and Fulham fans and Bournemouth fans and stuff like that. And now everybody's like, well, obviously he's an idiot then because we've not scored enough goals apart from them first 2 games. So we just need to be better. We just need to make better decisions in the final third. We do have good players who are now getting stick because they've not been great for a few games, like Luca Koleosho. Love the kid. I think he's got the world at his feet, but he does need to be a little bit better in the final third. He does need to make better decisions. But again, he's a kid. Like, it's going to come with age, isn't it? So yeah, we just need a bit. We just need to think a bit better when we get in the final third. And to be fair, we do need to do it a bit more because against Millwall we were awful. But the thing that I worry about is Scott Parker at Bournemouth had Solanke, at Fulham had Mitrovic. So when they were getting into these areas, they had a player like that of that caliber to be able to turn possession in that area to a goal or a chance. We don't have that. We don't have a striker to hang our hat on at the minute. And I think that's where Scott Parker's tactics, if they do come unstuck, that's where they'll come unstuck this season.
Fair enough. So you're saying you don't necessarily have a striker to kind of rely on. So who would be the key players that might be expected to do some damage for Burnley when they play Swansea?
Well, thankfully, Zian Fleming's back. Obviously, he missed the Millwall game because he is technically on loan from Millwall with an obligation to buy at the end of the season. He did score against Hull. That was his first goal of the season for Burnley. But the problem is he's been playing in the number 9 role because our main striker, Lyle Foster, is injured. He got an injury while playing for South Africa. Shoulder or elbow, I can't remember exactly what it is. But he would be the player playing in the 9 with Zian in the 10. I think that's the ideal sort of like team when we get it. But at the minute, Zian's been playing in the 9. and we're having to put like a box-to-box midfielder in the 10 and things like that. But I'm hoping, because of Zian missing the Millwall game, we had to play one of our new strikers, who admittedly hasn't looked great, Andreas Hontondre, in the number 9, but he's a proper striker, and he was making runs. Like, yes, he didn't do anything, but he was making runs and stretching the play, which was bringing other players into the game. So hopefully, in my opinion, what he should be doing against you guys, and again, obviously, he may have already done this against West Brom. We don't know what he's going to choose at this stage. But hopefully he plays Hontondre in the 9. He may not look great. He may have the technical ability of a toddler at times, but he's making the runs and he's got pace and he's got power. And then that could obviously bring a player like Zian Fleming in the 10 into it. And then the wingers as well, if he's creating space with his runs. So there's just too many square pegs in round holes at the minute because of injuries, because of stubbornness. Well, not stubborn. It's a bit harsh to call it stubbornness after 13 games, but because Scott Parker is choosing to play Corley Oshaw on the right, for example, rather than on the left to accommodate Anthony, who we worked with at Bournemouth, to be fair. So, yeah, we just need a few tweaks in terms of personnel. But, yeah, if you're looking at players that might hurt you, Corley Oshaw, who just needs to make better decisions, but he can be very good, and Zian Fleming.
2 players I want to touch on, ex-Swansea players. You've got Connor Roberts, and is he still there? Jack Cork, is he still...
Jack Cork is there, but he's not a player anymore. He's like an under-21s coach. He left, but didn't officially retire, I don't think, in the summer, and then came back. But for some reason, they didn't announce it till about 2 weeks ago. I have no idea why.
I was going to say, I haven't seen him. I can't see him on your squad list, but I didn't realize.
I think he's a... Like I said, he's officially an under-21s coach, and somebody did say once that he would have, a coach-player role, but I'm not sure if that's either been made official or it could actually be bullshit. He's there, but as a coach officially.
What about Connor Roberts? How's he getting on?
Yeah, well, obviously he got injured on international duty against, I can't remember who against, but playing for Wales. And annoyingly, it was the first international break, and he missed every single game in between. And then was ready to play for Wales again at the next international break. And I'm just sat there thinking, come on. I mean, I like Connor. I think he's our best fullback at the minute. I think he was brought in under Dyche, and I thought, he didn't get enough of a run in the team under Dyche. But, he did well under Company. I think he's, like I said, the better fullback we have at the minute. I do like Connor, but I always feel like he not regrets leaving Swansea, but I feel like he misses it a lot. Like he doesn't seem to.
I think he's Swansea through sort of.
Yeah, he is, but he doesn't seem to have that rapport with the Burnley fans.
Yeah.
And there's like some occasions where like he doesn't clap the fans, and I'm thinking like every single player's clapping the fans, and I'm just nitpicking here. To be fair, I do like him; he's a good player, but I just would like a better rapport with him. You know what I mean? I would like a better relationship with him, not personally, but as fans. And I just don't really feel like he's that bothered.
But I don't know the ins and outs of what happened, but I get the impression he didn't want to go, maybe, when he did go. Like, it was quite a cheap fee, I felt, at the time for what was paid for him. Late in the window, I think it was, wasn't it? And he only had 1 year left on his deal, which is why it was the price that it was. Yeah. For us, maybe it's not a cheap fee for the quality you buy, and I'm not sure that's obviously up for debate by yourselves, but I think for what he was worth to us at the time, definitely we all hated it. And I think the contract, we stopped the parachute payment and we didn't have them anymore, and he probably wasn't going to be on a wage that we could perhaps afford in the squad, and it was one of them reluctant kind of have to move on. You've probably outgrown where we are at the moment, and Premier League comes knocking, you can't really turn it down, I guess. So yeah, one of them sad ones, I think, but it is what it is. Maybe one day he'll return. Sorry, there's another one.
I genuinely think one day he will return. Like I kind of feel like he loves Swansea. I do feel like one day he'll return, to be fair.
Sorry, a third one I should have mentioned just now. Bashir Humphreys on loan with us last season.
Was it? Did not know that.
To see how maybe he's coping, because he didn't have the best of times with us.
Really? I mean, he's been playing in some games, but not in all of them. Sometimes mainly playing as a left back. Obviously, it depends on the type of opponent that we're playing. I think he might play tonight against West Brom.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But against you boys, we'll probably have Pires there because hopefully we'll have more of an idea of trying to attack somebody at home. But we'll see what happens. But he's looked okay. Like I think he's looked, he's got a good head on his shoulders every time he speaks. Some footballers, like, you listen to him, you think, what's this guy waffling about? But with Bashir, like, he talks, and I think, yeah, this guy's good. He knows what he's talking about. So he's looked okay. He's not been a world beater, but I think he's one of the players that Burnley have bought recently, like they've ever been doing since the new ownership came in. Like, yes, we'll buy them for cheap now. Might not be great now, but the idea is we'll flip them for in 2 years for double the price.
I think he's got potential. He struggled with us, but we had a bit of a turbulent year with a couple of managers, and he was signed for the original one, who he probably had the best time under. But then when he went, we tried going more of a passing direction. He seemed to struggle with it. So it's interesting to see he's come into your team now, who kind of plays a passing approach to your system. Yeah. He was just getting caught out on, we passed it around the back, and the oppositions would be on him. And he seemed to make mistake after mistake after mistake, dealing with the pressure. So maybe he's learned from it, and last year was his first full year from what I understand, at this level. I know he got called up to the England squad before we signed him and never made an appearance. So he's highly thought of. Yeah. So I'd imagine that, if you can get him playing well, you will definitely flip him for some decent profit. So
yeah, we've done quite well with that recently. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of that model, because the famous saying is never fall in love with a loan player, like we did with Nathan Teller, because obviously you might never see them again. They might never play for your club again. I feel like at the minute you can't really fall in love with a player, because Dora O'Shea, for example, brought in last summer, sold on. There's all these players that are just brought in one summer, sold on the next, brought in and sold on the next. So that is the idea. The idea is buy player to maximise profit. But for me, I'm not a massive fan of it. I'd like to see them there for a while and then sell them on for profit, ideally.
Yeah, exactly. Can I just ask who you might think, if you look at Swansea squad, anyone that you worries about?
I mean, I know you've mentioned him already, so it's kind of a bit of a cheat code.
That's all right. I know you probably haven't watched that much of us. I like to catch people out with this question, but sometimes...
Yeah, you probably would have called me out, if I'm honest with you. Yeah. But obviously, you've already mentioned Ronaldo, so I'll go with Ronaldo. The way you described him does worry me a little bit, because we don't tend to worry about opponents in the way that you said will be the best way to stop him, which would be, mark him with two men. I can't see us doing that. So if he gets a run at our fullback and gets his tail up, but which side did you play on? Did you said he plays on the
either
right?
He's been switching all season. So
if he's up against Connor Roberts, I think Connor might be able to deal with him. But
if last game on the left, so
yeah. If he's up against Connor, I think Connor might be able to deal with him. If Connor plays, because I seem to remember last time in the Championship, I remember him suspiciously picking up an injury the week before we played Swansea. But if he's up against Humphries or Pires, then he might get a bit of joy.
I think maybe if Williams is sensible, he probably knows a bit more about Humphries, and if Humphries is starting, don't know. Depends what he thinks of Humphries, I guess. He didn't play that much under him, to be fair. Okay, I'm just going to have a little bit of a cough. Last question before we end. What's your best ever away day?
Best ever away day? It's got to be, I'm showing my age a bit here, but my favourite ever away day has got to be Reading 0, Burnley 2. It was in 2009. I think if I remember rightly, you guys weren't in the playoffs because it was us, Reading, Preston and Sheffield United, and obviously we beat Sheffield United in the final. But I think you guys beat Sheffield United around 3 or 4 weeks before the end of the season in the 2008 or 9 year. And I remember we were like 6 at the time. I remember thinking like, oh, Swansea are going to catch us. We're going to fall out of the playoffs. Thankfully, you didn't. We ended up finishing 5th. Preston finished 6th. Sorry to swear on your podcast, but I do actually remember Cardiff being in 4th and somehow finishing 7th on the final day. So they're somehow dropped out, which I guess you would have enjoyed. But then in the semi-finals, obviously we played Reading at home first. They were the much better side than us throughout the course of the season, and probably in that first game as well, it was a very tight affair. But Andre BK, who we ended up signing that summer, actually, did a stupid challenge on one of our players, fouled him. The Graham Alexander, penalty king, took the penalty away. And I'm just thinking, buzzing, at least we can go to Medeski and try and protect something. But we went there and, we were so good. Like, we beat them 2-0. And I was only 21 at the time, so it's like 15 years ago. And obviously, football's still a massive part of my life. But, at this stage, career, child, mortgage, partner, that sort of thing. So it kind of loses a bit of importance. Whereas back then, it was the main thing in my life. I was like, wow, Burnley are going to Wembley for a chance to play, in the playoff final. So for me, it would beating Reading at Madejski Stadium to seal a trip to Wembley. There's been some up there recently that I've quite enjoyed. Winning the league at Ewood Park. I mean, if I was 21, I think maybe that would have topped that. But obviously, that's a good one. The first time we ever beat Blackburn in my lifetime, which I think was around 2014. Danny Ings scored a late winner. That were a good one as well. But yeah, I think Reading just edges it for me.
Sorry, but I needed it. Always happens in the worst times when I'm doing a video.
Yeah, of course, every time. Mate.
Yeah, but yeah, that's fine. It was a good answer, to be fair. I think maybe going back to that season might have been when we just come up from League One. So I'm trying to think where we would have finished. Maybe like just outside the playoffs. I think when we came up from League One, we kind of improved every year, and then I think it took us 3 years to get to the playoffs, and that's when we went up to the Premier League then. So I remember that Cardiff obviously quite competitive, but we managed to jump them in regards to going up first. So that was always a nice bragging right. But yeah, going back to memory lane with that one. So thank you very much for that answer. If you could just remind everyone then where they can find your content for TurfCast then, please.
Yeah, so mainly on YouTube. We're mainly like a fan channel, but obviously we just mainly do like podcasts and debate shows. None of this like AFTV shouting, screaming nonsense. But we're mainly on YouTube. Just search TurfCast on YouTube. You can find us on all the usual podcast platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, all that. And obviously on Facebook and Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Instagram as well.
Thank you very much for joining me today, Joe. Of course, good luck for the rest of the season. But as you said to me, after the weekend. And I'm sure we'll catch up again later in the year as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, good luck. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for watching. As always, we'll catch you in the next video.